In the middle of a dusty desert outpost, Corporal David Harlow heard the sudden crack of gunfire. His squad dropped behind cover, but he froze when he saw a small child standing alone in the open, too shocked to move. David wanted order in every fight, yet he always put himself at risk for others. He sprinted forward, grabbed the child, and pulled him close. As bullets tore the sand around them, David noticed something strange, a thin red thread tied around the boy's wrist. It made his stomach tighten, though he didn't know why yet. Gunfire echoed from every direction, bouncing off the abandoned concrete walls of the outpost. David crouched low, shielding the boy with his body. His squad shouted, waving him back toward cover, but he didn't move. The urge to control the situation wrestled with the instinct that had already decided for him. The boy was trembling, face blank, still in shock. Dust stung David's eyes as another burst chewed the dirt just inches from them. He pressed forward, lungs burning, determined to make it to the nearest barricade before the next wave of shots pinned them down completely. David slid behind a half-collapsed barrier with the child still tight in his arms. His squad swarmed around him, angry faces beneath dusty helmets. They wanted answers, but David didn't care. The boy pressed against his chest, silent and stiff, as though holding back words. His commanding officer barked that he had risked lives for one civilian, but David barely listened. He studied the red thread on the boy's wrist again. It was tied neatly, not something random. The detail unsettled him, leaving him with questions he couldn't yet form. He kept the child close, ignoring the criticism. The firefight raged on. Bullets punched holes through crumbling walls, and shouts from unseen attackers filled the air. David adjusted his grip on the boy, shielding him from flying debris. The squad fired back, faces grim, yet their eyes kept flicking to the small figure in David's arms. The tension wasn't only about the fight anymore. Doubt spread, questions unspoken. Why was the child here in the middle of crossfire? David didn't have an answer, only a tightening in his chest. He told himself to focus on survival first, but his gaze kept returning to that red thread. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Mercer, snapped orders to fall back toward the old radio tower. David followed reluctantly, holding the boy. The squad's distrust grew with every step. Sand whipped across the compound, turning the retreat into a blur. The boy clung tighter, breathing shallow, still silent. David thought of the chaos against his craving for order. He wanted structure, clarity, rules, yet he knew he would always break them to protect someone weaker. Mercer glared at him, muttering that his mercy would kill them all. David said nothing, only tightened his hold, the contradiction pulling at him. Inside the tower's base, they caught their breath. The squad argued in sharp whispers, suspicion bleeding into every word. Some thought the boy was bait. Others thought he was just unlucky. David didn't join the debate. He crouched against the wall, checking the boy for injuries. There were none, just dust and the red thread on his wrist. The boy's eyes, however, unsettled him most. They weren't blank anymore. They were focused, watching everything with strange calm, too steady for a child in a war zone. David avoided Mercer's glare, telling himself again that mercy was the right choice. The walls shook as another explosion rattled the compound. A drone buzzed overhead, stuttering in its movement, spinning erratically as though damaged. It slammed into the ground nearby, sparks spraying before going silent. David flinched, but kept his eyes on the boy. The squad fell into silence, staring at the wreckage, aware they were cornered and cut off. David's heart pounded. The child didn't react to the crash at all. Instead, his small fingers traced the red thread on his wrist, as though it held some secret meaning. David couldn't explain why it made him feel uneasy. The squad prepared to move again, weapons ready. The boy finally shifted, pointing down a narrow corridor between broken walls. David noticed, but Mercer ordered the team in a different direction. David hesitated, torn between his craving for order and his instinct to trust the child. He followed Mercer, but unease grew with every step. They barely avoided another ambush, enemy fire tearing into the ground where they had just stood. David looked back at the boy, who was staring silently at him, almost as if to say he had warned them. Guilt gnawed at David. The sun dipped lower, turning the desert sky orange. David's squad slipped into an abandoned barracks. They searched quickly for supplies, finding only empty crates and broken furniture. David set the boy on a cot for a moment. The child sat upright, posture too deliberate for his age. David knelt to study him, whispering a quiet thought, though no words left his mouth. The boy reached up and touched the thread again. David felt a chill run through him. Something about that simple red string made this situation feel staged, not random. He didn't dare say it aloud. The barracks went dark as the power flickered out completely. A distant hum of a generator cut off, leaving only silence broken by gunfire far away. The squad lit dim flashlights, their beams darting nervously. Shadows stretched across the walls, distorting their faces. David pulled the boy closer, unsettled by how calmly the child sat in the dark. The squad muttered, voices rising with suspicion. Someone asked if the boy was a decoy, a trap. David snapped back that he was just a child, but inside he wasn't sure anymore. His mercy had no proof to lean on. Mercer cornered David, whispering sharply that if the boys slowed them down again, he'd be left behind. David felt rage climb up his throat, but swallowed it. He stared at the boy, who simply watched in silence, small hands gripping David's sleeve. A fresh burst of gunfire forced them back into movement. They moved through a shattered hallway, sand crunching under boots, every soldier tense. David's heart wrestled with itself. His craving for order wanted him to follow Mercer's commands, but his instinct screamed to shield the boy. The contradiction pushed heavier with each step they took. The squad reached a courtyard, littered with overturned vehicles. The air smelled of burned metal. David held the boy close as they crossed quickly, trying to avoid open lines of fire, but the boy tugged his sleeve, pointing toward an alley. The others groaned, refusing to follow a child's gesture. David ignored it, reluctantly, staying with the group. Moments later, shots rang out from the alley itself, grazing one soldier. The squad cursed. David's gut twisted. Had the boy tried to lead them away from danger, or straight into it? The question lodged in David's mind, refusing to leave. They ducked into an abandoned store, the air heavy with dust and silence. David crouched low, trying to steady his breathing. The boy sat calmly, looking around as though he had been here before. David couldn't shake the feeling that the child wasn't lost at all. He studied the thread again. Why was it tied so neatly? Why did it look so intentional? His hands itched to untie it, but something inside him warned against it. He felt watched, not just by his squad, but by whatever secret this boy carried. His mercy was starting to feel dangerous. A sudden crack split the silence as the old generator somewhere outside gave one last sputter, then died completely. The building sank into deeper darkness, leaving only the flicker of their flashlights. The squad froze. In the silence, every small noise became louder, boots shifting, breath catching. David pulled the boy into his lap. He told himself he was giving the child comfort, but he knew he was clinging to him too. The contradiction burned. He wanted control, order, reason, yet he couldn't let go of a boy whose presence defied all logic in this place. They waited, crouched in the dark, listening for enemy movement. David traced the wall with his hand, the dust rough under his fingertips. He thought about how badly he wanted to restore order, to believe this mission could still make sense. But the child's presence made that impossible. His mercy had turned everything into chaos. Mercer whispered that the boy had to go. David didn't answer. The boy leaned his head against David's chest, as if trusting him completely. The small weight there forced David's choice every second, and it was a choice tearing him apart inside. Gunfire erupted again, forcing the squad to bolt through the back door into a narrow street. Bullets cracked off the walls, the squad returning fire in bursts. David ran, clutching the boy tightly. His legs burned with every stride, but he didn't falter. The boy turned his head toward the enemy fire, watching with a disturbing calm. David's heart raced. He didn't understand how a child could be this steady. The contradiction returned again. He demanded order in the fight, yet he ran into chaos willingly, because the weight of the boy in his arms wouldn't let him stop. They reached cover behind a burnt-out truck. There, David spotted papers scattered from the crashed drone earlier. He picked one up with his free hand. The document mentioned a secret operation in the region, classified information he wasn't supposed to see. His stomach tightened. The boy glanced at the paper too, eyes narrowing briefly before returning to blank calm. David stuffed it into his vest. Mercer noticed and snapped at him, but David ignored it. He felt a rising suspicion that the boy and this document were connected somehow. His mercy might have tied him into something bigger. The squad regrouped, tempers flaring. One soldier accused David of risking all their lives for the child. Another said the boy might be a signal for the enemy. Voices rose until Mercer ordered silence. David sat apart, holding the boy. His contradiction gnawed at him. He wanted structure, order, clean rules of command, yet he couldn't stop himself from protecting the child, who might be the reason everything was collapsing. He remembered the look in the boy's eyes earlier. Too focused, too calm. His mercy was dragging them all deeper, but he couldn't walk away from it. A light drizzle started, rare in the desert. The smell of rain on hot asphalt filled the air, sharp and heavy. The squad paused briefly, almost startled by the sudden shift in scent. David inhaled, and so did the boy. For the first time, the child flinched, eyes wide with something like fear. His tiny hands clenched into David's shirt. David held him tighter, unsettled. What about the smell triggered this reaction? David's mind raced, trying to balance reason and instinct. But the boy's fear made his choice for him. He would not let go, no matter the reason. They pressed on through the wet streets, every soldier drenched in sweat and rain. The boy refused to release David's shirt. His silence felt heavier than words. David glanced down, heart tightening at the sight of those small knuckles clenched white. Around him, his squad looked at the child with suspicion, even disgust. To them, he was a burden, a possible threat. To David, he was a responsibility he couldn't abandon. The contradiction tightened its grip. He knew his mercy made him reckless, but he couldn't walk away. The boy's fear had sealed the decision before David even noticed. They reached a broken stairwell, stopping to rest briefly. David sat on the steps, the boy leaning against him, silent. This moment was quiet, apart from the dripping water and distant echoes of gunfire. David studied the boy's hands as he traced the red thread again and again, like it was a memory. David thought of home, of times when life had been simple, before rules and orders became his world. His chest ached. He wanted clarity, but holding this boy reminded him that clarity was gone. His mercy had replaced it with something far more fragile. Inside a half-collapsed cafe nearby, David found a cake box left behind on a counter. Frosting melted from the heat. A forgotten birthday cake, candles unlit, sat there untouched. He stared at it, feeling an ache deep inside. Innocence abandoned in a war zone, sweetness left to rot. The boy's eyes locked on it too, and for the first time his lips parted slightly, though no sound came. David tightened his grip on him, shielding him from the sight. The cake was more than food. It was a reminder that childhood had no place here. David's mercy refused that truth. The squad's patience snapped again. Arguments erupted over whether to leave the boy behind. David stood silently, refusing to engage. His decision was clear, even if it cost him his squad's trust. The boy's gaze flicked between the arguing men, calm and calculating, as though he understood more than they realized. Mercer growled that this wasn't a rescue mission, it was survival. David thought of his need for order, rules, and structure. Yet here he was, shattering those very rules. His mercy made him reckless, but it also anchored him. He would protect the boy, regardless of their protests. The boy finally whispered a single word, so soft only David heard it. His name, not Corporal, not Harlow, just David. His blood ran cold. The boy should not have known it. David stared down at him, heart hammering. The others didn't notice, still caught in their arguments. The boy stared back with steady eyes, as if waiting for recognition. David tried to steady his breath, but panic gnawed at him. How could this child know his name? The contradiction within him screamed louder. He wanted order, but mercy had entangled him in something beyond rules. Before David could process it, gunfire shattered the cafe's windows. The squad hit the ground, returning fire immediately. David shielded the boy, pressing him down against the floor as shards of glass rained over them. The battle was chaos, shouts and bursts of gunfire echoing off the broken walls. David barely aimed, firing blindly to hold back attackers. The boy stayed pressed to his chest, silent again, but David felt his gaze heavy against him. The fight dragged, his squad losing ground. David's contradiction grew sharper. He demanded order, yet clung desperately to mercy that was costing them dearly. The squad managed to drive the attackers back, but they were shaken. Casualties were close. David crouched, holding the boy tighter than ever. His mind spun with the whisper of his name, the red thread, the calm stares. None of it made sense. Mercer demanded answers, accusing David of endangering them all for something that wasn't what it seemed. David stayed silent, but inside his resolve hardened. He had chosen mercy, and now he would live with the weight of it. The boy's identity was no longer a mystery he could ignore. It was a storm waiting to break. The squad retreated deeper into the ruins, their nerves shredded. Mercer pulled David aside, whispering that intelligence reports suggested children had been used before, planted to bait soldiers. David shook his head, but his chest tightened. The boy clung tighter, refusing to let go. In the shadows of the crumbling structure, they found markings on the wall, symbols connected to classified operations. David had never been briefed on. The sight confirmed his fears. This wasn't random. The boy's presence was tied to something larger. His mercy had bound him to a mission far beyond what he understood. As exhaustion weighed heavy, one soldier snapped. He grabbed the boy roughly, yanking him from David's arms. David lunged forward, rage exploding, but Mercer stepped between them. The soldier argued that orders mattered more than sentiment. He claimed to have instructions to retrieve the boy separately, even if it meant splitting from the squad. David saw betrayal in his eyes. His contradiction roared. He wanted order, discipline, obedience, yet here he was ready to break every rule. He slammed the soldier back, reclaiming the boy, his mercy turning violent, exposing how far he had already fallen. The confrontation escalated. Guns half raised, the squad fractured in an instant. David's voice shook as he told them the boy stayed with him. Mercer cursed under his breath, torn between authority and chaos. The boy remained calm, watching them with eerie composure, as if this was all expected. The tension nearly erupted into bloodshed, but an explosion nearby forced them back into motion. David knew he had crossed a line. His craving for order was useless now. He had chosen mercy, but it had torn the unit apart, and there was no undoing it. The fracture would only widen. Enemy fire closed in, echoing through the alleyways. The squad stumbled into an abandoned warehouse, quickly realizing they were surrounded, trapped. Their options dwindled. David crouched low with the boy, searching for escape routes. Shadows moved outside, their attackers waiting. The squad argued in hushed tones, fear biting through their words. David's pulse hammered. He felt the contradiction pull him apart. Obedience told him to focus on survival for the squad. Mercy demanded he protect the child. Above all else, sweat poured down his neck as he realized neither option promised survival. Both paths carried destruction. They huddled in silence as footsteps echoed outside. David sat with the boy in his lap, the child's head resting against his chest. The stillness felt unnatural. He traced the thread again, his small fingers calm. David's eyes blurred with exhaustion. In this quiet, he thought of the world beyond war. He thought of order he once believed in, and the mercy that had now consumed him. The boy shifted slightly, breathing slow. For a fleeting moment, David let himself feel peace. It was fragile, and he knew it couldn't last. But he clung to it anyway. The peace shattered when attackers breached the warehouse. Gunfire tore through walls. The squad fought desperately, firing into the smoke. David shielded the boy with his body, firing one-handed. A comrade fell beside him, a cry cut short. Blood spattered across the floor, but David kept pushing, rage and fear boiling together. The boy stayed pressed against him, calm, even in carnage. The contradiction sharpened again. His mercy meant life for the boy, but death for his brothers in arms. Every shot fired reminded him of the cost. Still, he couldn't let go. He wouldn't abandon the child. Amid the chaos, the boy tugged David's sleeve, pointing toward a side door, half hidden by rubble. David shouted for the squad to follow, dragging the boy through. They broke into a narrow tunnel leading outside. David's lungs burned as they ran, the boy guiding with small gestures. Hope flickered. Maybe they had a chance. But as they reached the end of the tunnel, the exit opened back into the courtyard where they had started hours ago. David froze, heart sinking. The boy's guidance wasn't escape, it was a circle. The contradiction twisted deeper. Nothing here made sense anymore. The squad erupted in anger. They accused David of following a child into a trap. Mercer demanded to know why the boy led them back. David's jaw clenched, but he had no answer. The boy clung to him, silent, eyes fixed on Mercer. David's craving for order screamed to obey his commanding officer. His mercy screamed louder, to protect the child at all costs. His world split in two. He realized the boy wasn't lost. He was leading them with purpose. David's chest tightened as the truth pressed heavier. They weren't guiding the child, he was guiding them. David slumped against a wall, head spinning. His contradiction roared inside him. He wanted clean, sharp rules, but mercy was dragging him deeper into chaos. He thought of all the lives already lost, the orders broken, the structure he had shattered. Yet when he looked down at the boy's face, he couldn't regret it. The child's calm expression, too knowing for his age, cut through every argument. David realized his mercy wasn't weakness. It was who he was, even if it destroyed him. The thought terrified him. It meant everything about his identity as a soldier was unraveling. The night deepened. David sat with the boy, trying to steady his breathing. The squad argued in the background, their voices distant to him. He stroked the child's hair gently, unsettled by how natural it felt. His mind circled back to the moment he first saw him, standing untouched in the open. It hadn't been random. Someone had placed him there. David's gut twisted. The boy wasn't a victim caught in the crossfire. He was the reason for it. The realization broke something in him. Mercy had brought him here, but now it demanded a price he hadn't expected. The squad finally cracked. An ally, Sergeant Briggs, revealed himself as the traitor. He admitted the boy was bait, part of an operation to expose loyalty and weakness in the ranks. Briggs raised his weapon, ordering David to hand the child over. The squad froze in shock. David's stomach dropped. His craving for order screamed to obey, but Mercy locked his arms around the boy. The betrayal cut deep. A brother in arms had been the true enemy all along. David realized the firefight wasn't about victory at all. It was about testing what he valued most under fire. Briggs smirked as he explained that the boy wasn't ordinary. He was the son of a powerful figure, tied to the mission, hidden away for protection. His presence here was deliberate. David's pulse pounded. Every uneasy detail made sense now. The thread, the calm, the name whispered in the cafe. It wasn't chance. The boy was part of a secret operation. David's mind reeled. His mercy hadn't saved a random child. It had tangled him in the very heart of something larger. His craving for order collapsed under the weight of betrayal. Nothing was as he believed. David's hands shook as the truth settled in. The boy looked up at him, eyes steady, as though confirming what Briggs had said. The squad muttered, disbelieving. Briggs demanded again that David surrender the boy. David felt his contradictions scream inside him. Order told him to follow the chain of command, to give up the child and survive. Mercy demanded the opposite. He couldn't hand over a child, even one tied to secrets beyond his reach. The decision tore at him. His pulse thundered. He realized his life, his men, and the boy's future all hinged on this choice. Briggs mocked David, calling him weak, unfit to lead. He spat that mercy was poison in war. David's jaw tightened, shame burning through him. He wanted to argue, but the truth of his contradictions left him silent. The boy's small hand pressed into his chest, grounding him. David looked down at him and felt the world narrow. He had chosen mercy every step of the way, even when it cost lives. Maybe Briggs was right, or maybe Briggs was blinded by a different kind of weakness. David realized the truth was simple. His choice was already made. The standoff stretched in silence. The squad wavered, eyes flicking between Briggs and David. David felt his craving for order collapse. He admitted to himself that order had never defined him. Mercy had. It was why he ran into fire for strangers, why he carried the boy despite every risk. He raised his weapon slowly, placing himself between Briggs and the child. His voice shook, but his stance didn't. He wouldn't give the boy up. He was done with rules that demanded he abandon innocence. The contradiction broke, replaced by a clear, burning resolve to protect. Briggs snarled and fired first. The bullet missed, ricocheting off metal. The squad erupted in chaos. Some shouted to stand down. Others raised weapons. David lunged, tackling Briggs to the ground. The boy pressed into a corner, wide-eyed but calm. The fight was brutal, hands and fists clashing as the squad hesitated, unwilling to choose sides. David's mercy had become strength now, giving him a ferocity Briggs hadn't expected. He fought not for rules, but for the boy. Every strike carried the weight of his decision. He knew if he lost, the child's fate would be sealed forever. The struggle ended with Briggs disarmed, his gun skittering across the floor. David stood over him, chest heaving, weapon aimed down. The squad stared, waiting for the shot that would end it. David's hands shook, Mercy had driven every choice until now, but killing Briggs meant abandoning it. He couldn't. Instead, he ordered Briggs tied and restrained. His squad hesitated, then obeyed. David's contradiction had found balance. Mercy didn't mean weakness. It meant strength in choosing restraint. The boy stepped closer, small fingers brushing David's arm. The silent gesture told him he had chosen right, even in chaos. With Briggs restrained, the squad turned to David. No one questioned his command now. His choice had changed something in their eyes. They followed as he gathered the boy into his arms again. The child rested his head on David's shoulder, calm but alert. David's pulse slowed. For the first time, his craving for order and his mercy aligned. He had forged his own path, one that didn't follow rules but didn't betray them either. The squad moved together, pushing toward the outpost's edge. Every step forward felt like reclaiming something David thought he had lost long ago. The final firefight came as they neared the outer walls. Enemy forces closed in, determined to trap them once and for all. David led the charge, the boy in his arms, firing with precision and resolve. The squad moved behind him, trusting his lead. Bullets sliced past, walls crumbling, but they pressed through. David's contradiction no longer held him back. He fought with clarity, knowing what he protected mattered. The boy didn't cry, didn't scream, only clung tighter. By the time the last shots rang out, the squad stood victorious, battered but alive. David staggered forward, refusing to collapse. They stumbled into silence, outside the compound. The night stretched vast above them, stars muted by smoke. David carried the boy still, though his arms ached beyond measure. Mercer approached, eyes heavy with loss, but softened by respect. The squad stood scarred, but together, Briggs, restrained, glared with quiet rage. David didn't care. He had made his choice. He had walked through fire with mercy as his compass, and somehow they had survived. The boy leaned into him, finally closing his eyes. The contradiction that once tore him apart now felt like strength carved into his very bones. Later, David learned the full truth. The boy was indeed the son of a high-ranking figure, abandoned here as part of a twisted strategy to protect secrets and test loyalties. The thought made David's stomach churn. This child had been reduced to a pawn, a living trap. It was worse than he imagined. He held the boy closer, determined that whatever games were played around him, he would not let this child remain a tool. His mercy made him reckless, but now it gave him purpose. He would fight for the boy's humanity where others had abandoned it. The squad buried their dead quietly under the desert stars. The weight of loss pressed heavy on every chest. David stood apart, the boy still near him. He thought of the men lost, of choices made. The contradiction inside him whispered, asking if mercy had been worth it. The grief said no, but the small hand clinging to his sleeve said yes. The squad looked at him differently now, not just as a soldier, but as something else. He had carried more than a child. He had carried the burden of choosing mercy over rules, and survived it. The boy stirred at dawn, his first words in hours falling softly. He called David's name again, this time steady, deliberate. David froze. The sound tore through him, making every doubt louder. How did the boy know him so well? The squad turned to stare. David's heart thudded painfully. He realized the child had been told about him, that his presence wasn't chance. He had been meant to carry him. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. He didn't know if this meant fate or manipulation. Either way, he could not walk away from the bond forged in fire. David stood at the edge of the desert, the boy in his arms. As the first light of day broke, he looked back at the smoldering ruins of the outpost. Everything felt changed, broken, reshaped. He thought of the contradiction that had haunted him, order against mercy. Now he understood. Mercy wasn't the opposite of order. It was the only order worth following, in chaos. The boy leaned against his chest, safe for now. David felt weary, but resolved. He couldn't undo the losses, but he could give the child a future free of being used as a weapon. The squad moved forward into the desert, leaving smoke and betrayal behind. The boy clung to David, no longer silent, but steady. David knew he had saved him, but at a cost he would carry forever. His craving for order had been shattered, rebuilt by mercy into something harder, more fragile, but truer. The war wasn't over, not for the world, and not for David. Yet as he walked, the child's small weight on his shoulder gave him strength. The future was uncertain, bitter, and hopeful at once. But for the first time, David accepted that truth.